All right. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Patty, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I
I know
try to
you're a
catch
little
your, I
you're a
try to
little bit
catch your
under the
light.
weather
Oh,
fighting it.
sorry. Yeah, no, keep interrupting you. I apologize. I just meant I keep trying to. I catch your live streams here and there whenever I can. I get busy sometimes, but I love the watching and people you have on, and love the conversations. And yeah, under the weather a little bit. I got this like frog in my throat. It's moved into my chest. Get a little bit wheezing there. My wife was earlier today. I was sitting on the recliner, and she's like, "Is that you wheezing?" I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "When are you going to go to the doctor?" I said, "I got a doctor appointment on Wednesday." I said, "I'll talk to him then. Just leave me alone."
Yeah, no, as far as trying to catch my lives, it gets a little bit tricky because I don't have a consistent schedule.
Mhm.
Um, like I've said, it's been a blessing and it's been a curse at the same time
Oh yeah.
because it's allowed me to access more people because I'm not stuck to a certain time slot.
Mhm.
But it makes it real difficult for people that like to catch the lives. And I understand it. At first I used to think, I'll just do the live stream and people can watch the replay. But a big appeal of doing the live streams is the interaction that takes place in the chat.
Correct.
And I've learned that now over the course of the time that's a whole different experience. So, people in the chat room are I can see it just flying sometimes. They get into these questions, conversations. It's like a whole event in its own,
Yep.
which I greatly appreciate because YouTube really likes that.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I know I'm not the easiest guy to follow for live streams, but that's one of the reasons why I like to bare minimum post them 3 days out so
Mhm.
that they get out there and people could go, oh, okay, he's going to be going on so day. I hate doing if I do a pop up, it's just usually gonna be me. I don't want to do that to a guest because then it
Yeah.
just kind of takes away, defeats the purpose of having a guest on.
Makes sense.
And but I know typically I usually bring in like smaller channels to kind of present them in a way, I guess, to the community.
Mhm.
Which at one point you were, but you quickly have blown up. By the time I got around to getting a hold of you, man, you really have had great success, but it's very understandable because you and I share a lot of similarities in philosophy when it comes to keeping aquariums.
Mhm.
And I thought I was kind of like the only one, not really the only one, but I didn't think there was that many of us. But watching your channel and the response that it's had is like, okay, we're not alone. We're not the only
Yep.
weirdos out there that are kind of I call it mix and match. I
Mhm.
take philosophies from other content creators and people that are doing tanking, and I take what I like from what they're doing and adapt it to my fish room. And I see a lot of that happening in your fish room, or am I
Absolutely.
wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. I take honestly the big three that I use a lot from was probably start with as a Corey and co-op with Corey. I mean, really just learning some of the hot rodding and just really the plant understanding of plants more from him was huge. But then like the deep substrates from Father Fish and kind of like that dirted tank aspect of it. But also Lucas over at LRB Aquatics. I love the no filters, the no air, and that whole just kind of more of a hands-off approach to it and letting nature take over. Well, if you call it that, but yeah, pretty much nature taking over. That's like a whole nother quandrum too, because we call like a lot of these things like natural tanks, but are they really natural? They're kind of man-made ones that try to turn natural, but so it's that's a whole debate in itself.
It's a micro version of a natural tank.
Yeah,
And even there, it's kind of like, really? We're just
yeah,
playing with words at that point because
exactly.
in the no system, well, there's ponds that might stay a little bit more stagnant than a lake or a river system, but
Mhm.
even then, the water volume in a lot of those areas is a lot bigger than anything we're going to keep in a glass box. You can
Yeah.
go out and dig an artificial pond or even use some of the bigger totes and get a little bit closer to that. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, we're I forgot who said it that we're playing God with these little creatures,
Pretty
because
much, pretty much.
but no, that's one of the like I was getting at like I was saying, one of the things that had really spoke to me in your channel is that I saw a lot of the things that I've been doing over the course of keeping aquariums that I could really relate to. And and it seems like it's I guess it makes sense because you're gonna get exposure to the bigger channels first. Like a Father Fish or a Lucas Breads or Aquarium Co-op.
Exactly.
But as you progress, at least I find it that because not every situation is the same, you kind of adjust it to what your needs are. And but there's still, I guess, even though there's a lot of ways to do things, there's a lot of common ways that eventually you guys will find some common ground somewhere along there.
Absolutely.
But I know that your channel is relatively new, but by no means are you a new hobbyist. How long have you been keeping aquariums before you decided to start a channel?
Honestly, I started about 30 years ago when I was 19. That's when I got my first tank. I got a 29-gallon tank set up, and I got a piranha. And again, that's why the logo is right now what it is. It's a piranha for my first fish I ever owned. I always was into, like, at that time, I wanted fish that are going to eat other fish, and I found that to be really cool to watch. So I got that piranha, but I only got one lone piranha, and he wasn't very active, and he bored me. And I think right away that multiple tank syndrome kicked in, because then I got another 55-gallon, and then I got 3 more baby piranha for that one to grow up, and they were ferocious. And then that wasn't enough, so I got another 55-gallon, and that one kind of switched off a bunch of different fish. I had like these little, little needle nose gars. Had those in there for a while with fire eels, and then I moved on from them. And my funny story, not to sidetrack it, but my brother at that time too had just gotten into aquariums, and there was a little fish store in a nearby town. He had a little community tank, and he bought this fish, and they told him it was a community fish. So he brought it home, and it ate everything in his tank. So he's like, "Do you want it?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" So I put it in there, not knowing what the heck it is. And at that time, this is probably like 95 or something like that. I mean, yeah, there's internet out there, but it's pretty slow at that time, and it's not like how it is now. I remember Googling around and trying to figure out what it was. It was a snakehead. I was like, all right, so that's pretty cool. So I had that for a while, and then I just got into cichlids a little bit too. And then when I met my wife and we got married and stuff, we moved into this house. I kept the tank, but I tried to go community tank. And honestly, at that point in time in my life and part of the hobby, I really didn't know a lot. Didn't know a lot at all. It was just like, what it said on the side of the boxes that you got. Like, there was no clubs for me. The local fish store was more of like a big box local fish store. I mean, I didn't talk to anybody. I just went in there and bought fish. I'm like, "Oh, this looks cool." And, they all wound up dying and just never worked out. So I kind of got over it and I gave it up for a while. Then I got out of the hobby for about probably like 7 years or so. And then I got back in. And that's when because to start off, I had a buddy at work that had the 75-gallon heavily planted tank, and I saw it on Facebook. I was like, wow, that's cool. I want that. So that's when I got on the internet and YouTube, and I found Corey from Aquarium Co-op. And that's where I started learning, first about the nitrogen process. I'm like, that's a thing. And this is how many years after I already started. If I would have known all this knowledge that I've had the last 5-6 years when I first started, we are always learning, but it would probably be a lot farther than I am right now. But, found him, never had live plants before, learned about live plants. I was like, oh my gosh, I love these. Actually, some of my tanks still have plants that grew from those originally plants I had probably 7 years ago. So yeah, it's phenomenal. Ever since then, it's just been going and going. To the grin of my wife, who when I got my first tank, it was actually this one. My son gave it to me because he actually got this one because that's another story. He gives me everything. He gets in the tanks and he gets out of it. So then he gives them to me. And I said, hey, next time you get back into the hobby, could you get a 125 or a bigger 200-gallon one? So when you get out of it, I can have that one too. But that's another story. So I got this one. And it came with the filter and everything. I told the wife, I said, it's only going to cost me $50. I just got to buy some fish and we're good. Way more than $50. And yeah, I hear that to this day. Every tank I bring down here, it's like, I told you no more tanks. I said, where there's room, I will find a way.
Well, when they're free, you will find a way.
Exactly.
You can't turn away. I tell my wife, it didn't cost me anything. Yeah, yet. Yet.
Yeah.
Then you got to build a rack, and then you got to do this. Luckily, the only thing that it actually cost me money is building a rack, because I am very fortunate because I'm out here in the desert. All the resources are available for me. I can go find substrate. Well, it takes a little bit of work because I can go to we don't have rivers. We have where water runs when we have a big rainstorm, and they call them washes.
Okay.
And so, they're all basically sand based, dried out rivers, really, or creeks or whatever you want to call them. And so I can go out there. I'll go scoop a couple of buckets. Come in here. I got a couple of like colanders with different sizes, and that I kind of do like separating aggregates. So I've got buckets with little rocks and boulders, other ones with a little bit more like medium size, and then I have my fines, and that's what the stuff that I end up playing around when I try to do an aquascape. I don't have to go buy any of that stuff. That's all here. And then the other thing I started doing, and something I think you've done too, is just go out and get dirt. Dirt is free. So I go find some dirt and throw it in the aquarium, cap it off with some sand, and call it a day. And it's worked out so far. I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've experimented with all the different things that are out there for growth. And I've learned some of those experiences to the hard way, like using the active substrates, the ones that are already, used to that. You got to cap those suckers, because if you don't cap them, you're going to be fighting algae the entire time. There's just too much nutrients in them. But it kind of also defeats the purpose if you're using that stuff, because but I've seen, like taking ideas from other content creators. One of the biggest influences on how I started doing my planet aquariums has been MD fish tanks.
Okay.
And just taking the little zipper bags with the media in there, with wherever you just want the area to plant, so that you're not putting dirt the entire layer on the bottom, and you're not going to be growing anything out of there. So that I've kind of poached a little bit of that idea and kind of incorporated some of my aquariums. Now you learn that it'll create elevation, so you're not using all this excess material. So those are some of the things that, like I said, that I've kind of poached from other hobbyists and kind of adapt them to my fish room. And I've done some things like that, and I see a lot of the stuff you do. I was always really interested in this whole when the live jars, or what were they called?
Those resurrection jars.
Yeah, resurrection jars. Yeah, I didn't go out and do that, but it was so interesting. This is when you realize that a lot of the stuff that some people put out there is just trial and error.
Oh yeah,
that's really what because I don't know how many times that whole recipe has changed.
Absolutely, and that's something I wanted to touch on too. It's like when I follow a lot of stuff that Father Fish does, and the resurrection jar interests me in the whole food web. And when I first did my first resurrection jar video, the first one I ever collected, that was probably over a year ago now. And at that time, watching his videos, he told you to grab a handful of gunk from the bottom of the river, mud, gunk. It didn't specify what, and you throw it in the jar. That's what I did. Now, I still found life and everything, but then before I put the video out, then it changed to, oh no, you need to grab leaf litter, organic material, not dirt. So I put a little thing in the video saying this is what it switched to, but this is what it is. So it switched to that, okay? And then it was you pour the whole jar into your aquarium, all right? So I did that. Well, then that's changed over times now. Now it's, well, you take part of it out and you put it in your aquarium, the leaf litter. You don't pour the water in. Then it's like, well, you just take a tiny bit at a time. Okay, so it keeps changing and changing. So I really don't even listen to that part anymore. I just kind of go with it the way I do. I had poured them all in, and it was going good. But my problem is I wound up getting infested with planaria worm that I did not see in a couple of the tanks. Not all of them, but it was a few of them. And typically, planaria worm have a place within the wild, within the substrate, with the leaf, they have a purpose, I should say. In our aquariums, they can be okay, but if you have shrimp or like fish eggs and stuff like that, you're trying to breed, they're a nuisance. And my blue dream shrimp population was pretty much depleted in the one tank. I found them in my rainbow shiner tank, which upset me. I found them in a couple other tanks. It was in these rare rice fish that I got from LRB. I was seeing eggs on them every single morning, but I was never seeing babies and never seeing eggs. I'm assuming that they were probably eating them. I can't say that for certain, but that's just my guess. So, and this is where I kind of strayed off of like the whole natural tank thing. Like, you can't use chemicals. You can't do this. I get it. It's not something you prefer to do, but I wound up using Panicure C, which was a canine dewormer, to kill those damn things because I don't want them eating my shrimp. I like to breed fish more for fun, but I will sell them. But for that, and I do sell plants at swap meets occasionally. I don't want to sell plants that are going to have planaria on it or eggs for it to pass off to another hobbyist. So one, I get a bad name, and I'd feel bad doing that to anybody. So that's what I did. So I used that stuff, and I'm sure it was frowned upon a little bit by some natural tank people, but honestly, I don't give a damn. I'm really at that mindset now. When I first started, it was like, I should really just do it this way. I don't want to upset it. I don't know. I don't care. This is my hobby. This is the way. I think it was Jim from Happy Place. It's your hobby. Do it the way you want it, however slogan is. That's pretty much the way I feel, man. It's just like, this is my hobby. These are my tanks. If I want to use some chemical in there, which I don't want to do, but if it's a last case scenario and I'm going to, then I'm going to. If you don't like it, you don't want to watch my channel because of it, don't care.
But and the irony is though, we're talking about doing an entire ecosystem. Well, that's the reality is, but we don't like it when it starts messing with something else that we have in there. Yep. I know I had an issue. One of the things that I noticed is that a lot of people don't really talk about Planet aquariums are awesome. They're great, but I don't hear it mentioned a whole lot that when you start messing around with plants, you're going to start getting little hitchhikers that you're probably not expecting to get.
Yeah.
And one of the ones planaria was never really a problem for me. I had them at one point, but they were in a guppy tank.
Yeah.
So I think the guppies finally gave them a run for their money and just kind of consumed them. Mm-hmm. But the one issue that I did have, it was in a 20 gallon tall that I had. I had leeches, and then they had to have hitchhiked on a plant and some plants that I got because I wasn't introducing anything. That was before I even started messing around with getting stuff from the wild, and it really got bad. I got more than anything else. I thought they were gross. It's not, I don't know if they were eating anything in there. I just found them disgusting because just seeing them on glass was not very appealing, and they would, and so I didn't want to go in there and nuke the tank. So I started doing a little bit of research, and I came across botias, yo-yo loaches, and I know they would eat snails. A lot of people will use them to kind of control snail populations. So I said, you know what? Let's give this a try, since these are going to be easier to get to because they don't have a shell. Because the snails, once they feel they're being pushed around, they'll contract, and then it'll get there and try to bring down the trapdoor to get to what it's trying to do. I said, you know what? I might leave my snails alone because it's going to have an easier prey. And sure enough, it ended up working out. And I thought it was just going to diminish the population, where it would be a little bit more controllable. No, they wiped them out completely. And I thought, that was an interesting, byproduct of trying something out. Mm-hmm. So ever since then, whenever I have an issue with either snails or planaria, which I haven't had planaria problem yet, but or something unwanted,
sure,
I'll throw yo-yo loach in there. It's not gonna happen overnight, especially depending on how bad the infestation is. But those yo-yo loaches, they're gonna put in some work, and in a few weeks, months, it'll all be gone, and then you can move them to another problem tank if you have one.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, if it was just a tank that just had fish, I didn't have anything there I was selling out of, I wouldn't care. They can be in there. Like I said, they have a purpose. They're more of a scavenger in the wild, but in your tanks, if you think about it, I mean, they don't have the food sources that they would out in the wild. So it's like, okay, what are they going to feed on? They're going to feed on the shrimp you have in there. They're going to feed on any eggs or something they can come across. It's their nature. It's not really their fault, but it just is what that is,
Yeah. I think the situation there is, if the takeaway from that for me was, if you're trying to breed anything for profit, then you want to deal with the problem. If you're not really breeding for profit, you just want to have a few extra more, I found that the leeches were not being a big problem with the shrimplets. They did reduce the population. I wasn't seeing as many of the little shrimplets as I did before,
Mhm.
but because I was using Lucas's method of having rock piles, um, it kind of created like a balanced amount of shrimp. Instead of having this abundance of shrimp all over the tank, it kind of dwindled down the numbers where they were able to keep up with the amount that the leech were consuming and the number of shrimps that I had. But because I thought they were so unsightly, I said, that's why I got rid of them, because I just, they make my skin crawl when I see them. I just, you know what it is? I got traumatized by Stand By Me, the movie
Sure,
where
sure.
the kids jump in the lake and all of a sudden they got all these leeches everywhere.
Yeah.
I said, no, they're similar enough, but not the same leeches. And
Mhm.
ever since that, I was afraid to even put my hand in the tank to do maintenance because I thought my hand was going to come out full of leeches. And, it was just stupid because that was not going to happen. But it's when your animal instinct brain kind of takes over and it's kind of like, you have all these, nightmarish situations playing out in your brain and you're like, I don't want to deal with that.
Well, the funny thing is, like with planaria themselves, if you actually, I did a lot of research on them, and those things are like straight out of a sci-fi movie. They replicate and multiply. You take one of them. I think I read it was like a study. I can't remember what the exact number was. They cut it into, I think it was like around 270, 280 pieces, and it replicated into that many more. So if you see them on the side of the glass, you don't want to crush them because you're going to get like probably a couple dozen more come out of that. And just the way, and some of the close-ups I had of videos of them in like my jars, like, oh my gosh, it was just like this. It was just creepy because their mouth is actually like on their belly. So when they get up onto something, they'll get on there and they have like it's like a toxin in the mucus layer they have, so they can paralyze the people, paralyze the things it's on. Like if it gets on a shrimp, I seen Alex from Fishery. He had a video that I watched a while back where he had a buried shrimp that was sitting at the surface of the water and there were planaria all on it, have it paralyzed. It just sits there and it ate all the eggs off of it and then wound up killing the shrimp itself because they like to burrow inside the shrimp and eat it from the inside. And that's another thing too. I don't remember what channel I seen it. Someone brought a shrimp into their tank and also they saw a planaria come out from inside of it. So,
hell no. That's like that's no kidding. That's like a sci-fi movie there.
I don't want no part of that crap.
Invaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, they're the little gremlins of the freshwater world.
Yeah. I just collected another big jar like 2 weeks ago, and I think I got a video on that coming out next week, but I'm going to be a lot more cautious with that one before I put it in there. I'm going to do something a little different with it and hope that doesn't happen again because I want to keep putting that in there. I did collect a huge pile of leaves today too outside. I think I put a picture on it on YouTube. I have it's a 32-gallon trash can. I filled it up with dead leaves. I'm like, I got enough leaves for the winter, so I can keep adding that because the shrimp love that crap, man. I noticed when I had that leaf litter at the bottom of my tanks and my shrimp population just exploded from that. They love eating on that.
You know what else likes that stuff is Corey's.
Cool.
If you can just drop a ton of leaves in the bottom of that, Corey's love that stuff. They're always playing around in it. But out here, we're in the desert, but I don't know why mulberry trees are so popular down here. My son, his front yard neighbor, the house in front of him, his neighbor in front of his house had a big old mulberry tree. And just as the weather started changing, it started dropping its leaves. So I went and knocked on the neighbor's door and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I take a trash bag full of your leaves?" And he was kind of looking at me like I was weird. and he's like, "Sure." So I went over there and scooped a whole bunch. And that's what I use. The shrimp, they love that stuff. You just break it up. I don't have to feed my shrimp tanks. I just drop, leaves, let them decompose. It'll be you'll get all that microfilm build up on it. And then they'll eventually, the tissue of that leaf gets so soft that they'll consume that. And then all you see is little skeletons of the leaf in the aquarium.
Yep.
But yeah, no, that, and I know Corey's, I don't know if I think it was Eric Bodrock is his name. He's a big Corey guy.
Okay.
And he was talking about an expedition he had done into the Amazon, and they were trying to see the habitats where these cories were growing.
Mhm.
And he said it was probably about 2 feet deep of just nothing but just leaves, and that's the environment they live in. So after watching that, I said, "Oh, I'm going to give that a try. I got a bunch of leaves. I'm going to just chuck them in the aquarium." Now, the problem with me is that if they're laying eggs, I'm not catching them, and if they're putting them up on the glass or whatever, they're eating them. I haven't put any mops in there either to see that. I've got plenty of albino cories that I've had, and that's how all my tanks have them, because they're expensive at $6 a piece. There's no way I was going to put all the ones that I have in here just buying them. So I got a group to spawn, and out of 2 spawns, I've been able to have enough cories for my entire fish room, and even sold them.
Nice.
And I haven't spawned them lately just because I don't have the room to grow them out. But again, trying to use natural resources to kind of help you instead of using methylene blue. At least with the cory eggs, what I found, because they're hard enough that the shrimp will not eat them, but they'll clean them. So I that's how I successfully was able to spawn these cories. I would take the little egg clutches and drop them in a little 10-gallon sherry shrimp tank that I had. And for a while there, I thought they might have eaten the eggs because I didn't see anything all of a sudden. But I guess because the little they had hatched, and they were just kind of hiding and consuming whatever macrofauna was in there, until it wasn't maybe like a couple of weeks later when I would see, like, I was sitting there, and I think I was talking to somebody on the phone, and out of the corner of my eye, I could catch that something would just kind of like dart, and I was like, "The hell was that?" So I look over and I couldn't see anything. And it happened a couple of times where finally one day I decided to sit with the chair and the lights off, and I was just kind of staring, and sure enough, there were the little cories, and I was like, "Oh," I was all super excited. That was actually the first fish that I had kind of bred, not intentionally, but that I was able to get to breed. Well, no, that's not true. I had guppies, but I don't count that as breeding. That's
too easy.
that's just don't mess with them and they're gonna breed. But that was the first egg fish that I was like, "Oh, cool." And then after that, I did it a couple of times with clutches that they had dropped, and it's worked for me so far.
That's
I don't know if it works for any other eggs, because cory eggs are pretty hardy. I mean, you can roll them around in your finger, and they're pretty tough. I don't know if anything that's a little bit more delicate would hold up.
Yeah.
And I haven't really tried it, so but it'd be interesting to see.
No, yeah, that is an interesting idea. I may have to try that if I found those rare rice fish I got, Matano rice fish. I had moved them, and then I found 3 eggs in my tank finally out of nowhere. So I took them out and I put them in a little container, which you probably can't see. They're up there. They've been up there for a couple of weeks. I don't know if they're going to hatch. One of them fungused up and went bad. I have a tiny bit of methylene blue. I'm not familiar. I don't really use this stuff ever. I just always kind of just throw stuff in there, and if it hatches, it hatches. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I had got some from actually Scott over at Raisin Fishes. He sent me some rice fish eggs, and he sent a little thing of methylene blue with me. So I have a little bit of it. I'm like, well, why not? I'll throw a tad bit in there. And then I changed it all out. I think it was like the next day or something like that. Like I said, I'm not that familiar with it. That's even the right process. But anyway, long story short, there's 2 of those eggs left in there. They're dark. It almost looks like there's something in there. And it's been about 2 weeks, so I don't know if they're going to hatch or not. They are a tropical rice fish, so it's supposed to be. I don't know. See, there's not a lot of information on them, so I don't know exactly what temperature they're supposed to be at. In my aquarium, I keep the tank at probably like 73 to 5 in that range. I don't have a heater in the thing up here right now, so it's probably around like 68 to 70 room temperature in here. So we'll see what happens. I don't have a lot of hope, but that'd be an interesting idea to put a shrimp in there instead, that methylene blue, to let them kind of clean stuff up and that. So I might have to try that next time.
Yeah, it would have to be definitely eggs that you could handle. Because I was just remembering, I tried it with my angelfish eggs, and that was not a good idea. That was one of, I forgot that I had done that. Angelfish eggs are a lot softer, and if you touch them, they kind of burst. So I know I did it with that, and that was not good. Even the snails even rat-hole snails will eat those eggs, so they're not very hardy. So don't do it with angelfish.
No, I don't got no more of those, so we're good right now anyway. My fancies of the types of fish I keep always change. Like I've got some swordtails and some platies that I'm thinking about either mixing or wind up selling. I got a swap meet I'm going to be coming up to in February. Might just sell the whole clutch of them and put something different in those tanks. Not 100% sure yet.
Yeah, every time I think I'm going to do something like that, I just don't get rid of them.
Yeah, I know.
And then like a few weeks down, I'm kind of happy I did it. Yeah. But yeah, your swordtails and your platies are basically, if you want to strain your swordtails, you got to intermix new platy blood in there.
Yep. So yeah, we'll see. Like my idea was to throw them together and just see what pops out. But other than that, I don't know. Well, we'll see. I don't know. Like I said, I go up in the air back and forth because then that comes down to, okay, hey, wifey, I want to buy more fish.
Well, you're up in an area where you got a few clubs around you, don't you?
Yeah, there's a Milwaukee Aquarium Society. I live in Sheboygan, which is right smack dab in the middle of Milwaukee and Green Bay. So there is a Green Bay Aquarium Society and a Milwaukee Aquarium Society. So Milwaukee has, I don't know how many swaps they have a year. I would guess probably closer to 4, if not more. Green Bay, I don't know if they actually have swaps, but there's a rescue, the JNR Aquatic Animal Rescue up in Neenah, which is outside of Green Bay, probably like a half hour. They throw a swap every twice a year, and that's kind of where I usually go up there and get a table with those guys when I do it. And yeah, I'm not in it for the big bucks. I'm in it for more to see. This is the thing. I love getting a table at a swap. You can sell some of your plants, some of your fish, make a little bit of coin, but you're there early. But you're there early before the doors open. So my wife was there last time. She wanted to come along and see the experience. I set all up. I'm like, okay, I'll see you in like 20 minutes. She's like, where are you going? I'm like, looking at all the tables, seeing what they got, and I'm going to buy stuff before people come in the door and buy it before I can get it. So I was like, oh, I want that. I was dropping off plants here, dropping off some shrimp, coming back with this.
Yeah, that's what I use. That's what I use spots for. Usually, a lot of the times I'll trade stuff. That's what I was getting at. It's great if you have access to a fish club or something that is willing to sometimes swap out stuff that you have. That's how I've gotten new fish down in here. I know people, I've sound like a broken record, but the only thing I have access to is a PetSmart. That's it. If I want to go to any type of store or club, I'm driving 3.5 hours, whether it's east, west, or south. Not south, north. Because if I go south, I could go into Mexico, but I don't know what I can bring across. That's the only. I know plants I can't bring. I definitely can't bring plants across.
Yeah.
And fish. Well, only if they ask what I'm bringing back. Well, if they don't ask, they don't want to know.
Just put them in your pants.
I was like, because the last time that I got the swordtails, I was gonna tell him, but he never asked me about. He just said, "How long have you guys been down to Mexico?" I said, just a couple hours. He goes, "Okay," and that was it. So technically, I did not declare him. So I was. Yeah, exactly.
Heck yeah, but
I was under the impression that fish, for the most part, like your standard stuff, it's not a problem, especially if it's like personal use, I guess. That's also kind of up for debate. What exactly is 20 tetras considered personal use or only 5? I've never had an issue with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but I know that if you're I know for sure anything that's illegal in the States to have, like in our case over here, would be like the snakeheads, Asian arowanas. Those are definitely, they're not coming across the border at all.
Yeah.
But this other stuff that you normally find at fish stores, for the most part, yeah, it's not probably going to be a problem. What I'm curious though is recently I found out that I guess like gadaids, supposedly you can't bring those across. I'm real curious. This must have been before that became a thing, because I guess once they really started pushing, the issue that they were kind of endangered, that's when I guess Mexico said you couldn't export them. But there's so many of them out here that I guess it would have been just tank bred. That I thought, all right, well, not that it'd be hard. It'd be easier for me to find Gideyes in the States than it would be in Mexico because they don't keep them. And I've there's a big fish community just like there is here with ours in Mexico. And every time I get a chance, I ask them, "Hey, do you know about Gideyes? Have you guys looked?" They don't know what I'm talking about half the time, or they call them feeder fish. That's what they use for feeder fish.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the reasons why they're also going to stink. Not only do they got to deal with whatever invasive species is in their waterways, they're scooping them out and selling them as feeder fish. They don't see the value in it. And every time I tell them, look, you start reproducing those suckers, people in the States and Europe will pay a good price for them.
Yeah, you make more money than selling them for feeder fish.
Mm-hmm. But it's always interesting. I always find that fascinating stuff that we take for granted. That I always found that it's a conversation that I've constantly had with other hobbyists. It's funny how we have local stuff, but I guess what I'm also finding out is a lot of states won't let you take a lot of the natives. But we have some really good looking native fish. And then I guess the other problem is a lot of these species are more cold water species. Mm-hmm. So they're not conducive to tropical temperatures.
Yeah, that's one thing talking about cold water species. I'm not going to switch over to every tank down here, but I'm trying to more to try to eliminate like heaters and stuff like that. Cause obviously in Wisconsin, it gets cold and if I didn't have heaters in here, I think my water temperatures in the middle of winter will get down to maybe like 65, 67, the lowest. And some fish can survive that, but a lot of plants don't like that bouncing up and down either. I don't think of the temperatures. I found that out when I had a heater malfunction. I think it was, I don't know, probably about a year ago when I actually had angels in a tank. I went and felt the tank. I'm like, why the heck is this so cold? I'm like, oh, sure, the heater took a crap. And then I noticed this big, huge crypt I had in there. I'm like, where did it go? Like, how long has it been cold that I didn't notice this? And the crypt melted back all the way. It was terrible.
Yeah, no, what I have the opposite problem. I have my temperatures get too high and my none of the ferns, they don't do well in the summer out here with me, and none of the mosses. Yep. The mosses, well, I'm not going to say none of the mosses, but I've kept like Christmas moss, Java moss, and right now I have a real small clump of Soracitang, but that's not really a moss, is it? And right now it's doing okay. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the summer, but because my running temperatures in my aquariums are probably high 80s, low 90s, in the peak of summer, and that's with me running a swamp cooler in here and trying to mitigate the temperature. But I think now that I'm done with everything I'm doing here, now is I'm going to be able to save up some money and actually buy at least a portable air conditioning unit. Because my goal is if I could keep the temperature at 80 degrees in the fish room, and this is summer temperature at 80 degrees, that means the aquariums will be around 77, 78 based on where they're located. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Those fish will be fine, especially, I do get some die-offs during the summer because there'll be times where it just gets too hot. Mm-hmm. And, and a lot of it is just, depleted oxygen, in the aquariums. And I'll have what ended up happening is the fish that were kind of weak and just kind of getting by when it gets too, those are the guys that'll die. But then everything that's strong will make it through the summer. Yeah. But, summertime for me, yeah, I do have a little bit of die off. Not what you would expect though, because most people would think everything would cook. But, usually it'll be like older fish that I've had for a while, or they're just not, they were already struggling. And then that situation just kind of pushed them over the edge.
Yeah, I think fish can, for the most part, adapt because if you look at them like in the wild, there's always temperature swings. Who was I talking to? It was White Cloud Dynasty. He breeds like white clouds and rainbow shiners and stuff.
Yeah.
I was talking to him in the comments of one of my videos, and he was telling me he collects the rainbow shiners in the wild. And he says you can parts of the rivers, it can be like 70 some degrees, and you go down to another part, it can be like a whole 20-degree difference change. You know, it's just, I think they can adapt more than we probably let them on to be. But I mean, obviously they get comfortable and used to these sometimes steady temperatures in these aquariums where those big spikes might cause stress and cause them to freak out, especially like you said, if they're weaker or older and stuff like that. Now I don't have to worry about.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna
say I think you're right onto that, because I think what happens with my fish room is we have, when our temperatures like in the winter and the summer are very constant, we don't have, like, it'll be uncommon to have a day that gets like dips really, really cold. Like I was telling you before we went live, our cold winters are maybe in the low 50s, but it won't dip more than that. You'll never have a day where it dipped down into the 30s or it got down to the 20s. Mm-hmm. It'll be consistently the same temperature. So we don't have any big temperature swings. So everything is gradual. And I think because of that, a lot of the fish will, slowly be adjusting to that gradual change of temperature. Mm-hmm. And in the summer, it's the same thing. We don't have a let off. It's not like it'll be 100 degrees in the day and then it drops to 60 at night. No, it's 114 in the day and it's 100 at night. Yeah. So there is not that big drop. The temperature stays pretty consistent throughout the entire time. And I think that has to do, that's what allows the fish to adapt to those extremer temperatures. Mm-hmm. I know one of the big contention topics that I have with the guys in Mexico is because they assume goldfish are like cold water species. And I tell them, because they're always saying, oh, you can't let it exceed more than, like, what is it, like, 78 degrees, because they're gonna die. And I tell them, no, I got mine are swimming in 89. It's just, technically they're tropical fish. They tolerate the colder temperatures. They do well, but they're technically, I watch all the videos, like Dexter's World, who's out in the Philippines. They're hot all the time, and he's spawning and producing goldfish like crazy. So that's when I started going, well, not everything you hear on YouTube is necessarily 100% correct. Yeah. So that allows me to push the envelope and investigate and go, oh, well, let's see what happens. I think I've gotten to the point now where I have enough experience that if I see something going wrong, I can correct action and kind of bring it back.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend a novice doing stuff like that, though.
Yeah, no, you live and learn, though. I mean, it's like a goldfish you're talking about. I mean, I had them outside in the summer tub, and I mean, got in the 90s. I mean, they're fine. They eat more. It's just like, and that's the thing too. I was like talking, or Chris Stubbs from Stubbs Aquatic had a video about his koi and how they will hibernate in the winter and stuff like that, and how people ask him why he doesn't take his koi in the winter. I'm like, well, like he mentioned too, they're like carp. They're a species that can live in both of those climates. In the winter time when it gets cold, they hibernate, and from my thinking of that too, it could actually potentially make their lifespan longer because they're not in constant warm weather where their metabolism going and they're constantly eating and going and going and going. Their body slows down and shuts down for 5-6 months a year. Then they come back and they eat more, and then they get bigger, and then it goes back into that cycle. So, I mean, I think it probably really depends on really what part of the world you live in. I mean, everything, whether it be fish or animals or human beings, we all adapt to where we are in the world and what atmosphere we're in. And we just, that's nature, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why fish become invasive, like koi can be invasive, goldfish can be invasive because they can tolerate all these range of temperatures. The fish that don't become invasive is because they have to stay in the specific range. And, once it gets out of that range, then that's when you have trouble. So, yeah, no, what I was getting at, a lot of the guys in Mexico, they're like, no, you got to keep them cool. Don't let them get hot because they're going to fall apart. And I'm thinking, I bear to differ, but, and they don't believe me half the time when I tell them. And then I'll turn around and show them. I'll got my little temperature gun and I'll show them the temperatures, like, they're going to die. I said, they haven't. They've been in those aquariums for years now, and they're doing fine. But again, it's one of those things where it's kind of gradual. It's not happening overnight. I'm sure if the temperature dropped just like that, they would probably send them in a tailspin and die. But it's like putting the toad in the boiling pot of water. It just gets, it'll get, to the point where it cooks. It doesn't know any better. Obviously, these temperatures are not going to reach that high of a temperature, but it's kind of the idea that they kind of adjust to what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, in that aspect too, any fish you take and you drop in a drastic water temperature change from where it was is going to freaking probably go belly up, whether it be hot or cold. I've made that mistake in the past too, forgetting about temperature acclimating, taking a fish from outside or wherever it was cold water and throwing it into one of my warmer tank water tanks. And also it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Going back to one of the reasons why I like keeping tanks like you do and I do is it eliminates having to deal with having to either heat aquariums, individually, or having to run any type of filtration system in them where you have to plug it in.
Mm-hmm.
That to me has been a big money saver, because now instead of having to run individual heaters in all of these aquariums, I could run a little space heater in the garage, keep the temperatures where it's reasonable. I got it set for 76, but because we do get relatively warm during the day, it'll get up to about 80 in here.
Mm-hmm.
And then it won't dip further than that at night. Right now it might, because I got the garage door open because I'm smoking a cigar, but even if I close this thing, it's our temperatures are not. We were in the 80s today. I think we were like 82 for the high. Right before I started, we were at 79. It must be a little bit cooler now. I just can't see the little thermometer that I have on the wall, but it still feels pleasant. I mean, I'm sitting here with a t-shirt, so it's not that cold.
We got ultra warm today here. We got up to 45 degrees.
Yeah, that's like super cold for me.
Oh, God. We were highs in the 20s for the last week and a half. So my body was getting, see, this is the thing when you live we're probably up in my area, Wisconsin, I know for sure. When we get these first colds, it's cold. Put my hoodies on. I still wear my shorts, but I put my hoodies on and wear my winter hats and stuff like that. But then after a month or so, when we get into the single digits, now my body's used to it. And then when you get actually another 20-degree weather day, it's like, hey, it's summer out.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you. Out here where we're at, we get a lot of the snowbirds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we call the people that travel from the the retirees that live in the northern part of the country and they get away from the winters.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is just telling me, hey, babe, it's going to get cold next week. I said, really? Well, yeah, it's going to be 60 degrees during the day.
Yeah, that's like spring for me.
She goes, it's going to start getting cold. And I was laughing because I was like, no wonder the snowbirds laugh at us, because 60 degrees for them is probably summertime.
Yeah. Yeah. My
but
wife,
it's like you said, you guys get used to that weather.
Yep. Absolutely.
Christine is another one that keeps her koi's out year round, and it freezes where she's at. And one of the things that I've always found fascinating is that little research that she was doing. I think it was last year or the year, it must have been last winter. Because she actually had 3 different probes in her ponds. Her ponds, I think, are 6 foot deep. And she's, how you always hear, way at the bottom, it's going to be the warmer temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And at the top, it'll be the cooler temperature. Well, the research she did, because she was logging everyday temperatures, getting reading. Mm-hmm. Well, come to find out, none of that is true. It's the middle of whatever water volume we have that's going to mm-hmm. keep that warmer temperature, which I thought was fascinating, because it just totally, threw out any ideas that I had. That it's again, you listen to that information on YouTube, and enough people say that you start thinking, oh, that's got to be true. And it's not until somebody like her that'll actually take the time and investigate it, mm-hmm. and it's kind of turns it all in his head. And now you're going, oh, okay, that's not what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's got some really nice ponds.
Now, the other thing that I've always been intrigued by, and now I know Patty is not your name.
No.
And I'm not going to share that because you haven't really made that public that I'm aware of.
I talked about it a few times. It's not like any, but yeah, Patty is, well, Patrick is my middle name, and that's where it came from. My real name is Adam. So people can call me Adam. They can call me Patty. I don't care. My
I
wife's
kind of like
family,
Patty because it's
yeah, my
different.
wife's family calls me Patty. It's like my nickname. So either way, I get called both. So really how it started was, this was like a few years ago. I was making fun of all my nephews and their middle names. If it was like James, I was calling him Jimmy. One was Edwin, so I was calling him Eddie. Then they started calling me Patty, and mine stuck. They stopped calling it. My brother-in-law called me Patty all the time, and it was just like, at first I didn't like it. I'm like, whatever. But then I started this YouTube channel, and out of a joke, I just called it Patty's Aquatics. I really had no intention of really continuing this. I just did it as a joke to show my brother-in-law and my wife, and I put a short video out. And then I had that short video got about 1,500 views, and I'm like, holy crap, is this something I can actually do? So it's stuck. I can't change it. And everyone calls me a Patty anyway, and it kind of sticks more now anyway. So it's just like, yeah, that's all right. I don't mind it. So yeah, Patty's my nickname. My middle name is Patrick. So
Okay, so I wasn't too far off because I figured, oh, he's got to be, his name's got to be Patrick, but I didn't know it was your middle name.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
when I think it was Brandon that told me, oh yeah, you can have Adam on, and I'm like, who's Adam?
yeah,
He's
yeah,
like, yeah, Patty. I said, oh, and then we spoke, and then it was kind of like, okay, but because I hadn't heard you say it
yeah.
publicly, I wasn't gonna.
Oh
I
yeah,
wait
no,
till people start using their names that or make it public, and then I'll call them by their name.
yeah,
It's just more normal to me. Although there's some people that I still call them by their channel name because I think it's just cooler. It just
yeah,
stands out more.
yeah. Yeah, I don't care what people call me. I mean, I do. Let me backtrack. You can call me Adam or Patty. Don't call me anything else.
Hey,
But funny story with this whole Patty thing. When I first started this up, I think I was selling fish and plants locally, and I was selling them like through Facebook and just advertise. And I would meet people at a local like Meyer department store in town here, and I had two meets set up at the same time. It was for this older lady and this guy coming to buy plants and fish, and I was meeting the older lady first, and then the other guy came pulling up at the time. She drove away, and he came out. Is like, well, where's she going? I'm like, what do you mean? Isn't that Patty? I'm like, no, I'm Patty. I thought I was talking to a girl the whole time. I'm like, nope.
I can be if you want. if it'll sell more plants.
Crap. Huh? Oh yeah.
Yeah, that
So
was the one thing when I came across your channel. I was like, "There's got to be a story for the Patty name because it's I think when I saw the name, I was under the assumption it was a young lady that was doing the channel.
probably maybe that'll get me more subs.
And then I see you coming on, and it's like, oh, maybe it's one of his kids or his wife or something. And
Mhm.
now it all kind of makes sense.
Yep, it's a nickname that is stuck now. Yeah, everyone. I mean, honestly, everyone on my wife's side of the family calls me it. So
Now, what do you got going on in your fish room now? Are you I know you said you like selling stuff like that, but is that something later down the road you'd like to do full time and sell
um,
stuff, or is it just something that kind of fills your empty time and keeps you busy?
it's more, yeah, more of that. It's more something that, okay, so my internal goal with my fish room is to enjoy what I do, set up these aquariums and try to grow plants and breed fish out of the fun and the challenge of it. And if I breed enough fish or sell or grow enough plants and there's swap meets coming around, I'll sell them there and go do that. It's not my number one priority for just selling fish or breeding to sell or breeding for profit, whatever. It's kind of like a side gig to it. So stuff I can get, I'll sell off if I get too much of it or I don't want it no more, and make a few bucks off of it, and typically wind up turning it around to something else within the aquarium. So that's basically it. Like I said, I know people that just breed entirely for profit. They keep their fish only to breed fish, to sell fish. They don't keep them out of enjoyment of watching the fish or anything like that, or keeping them. It's just entirely selling. That's the exact opposite what I am. I keep and sell keep and take care of my fish and my tanks and these little ecosystems for the challenge and the fun of it. And if I can, like I said, every one of my tanks for the most part are species only tanks. So I want to breed them. I want to be able to breed them. And if I can successfully breed them and colonize them and have fun with it, then I can sell some off and keep my numbers down. I want to be able to stock up my tanks with the fish that I breed. And then, you know, if I need to bring in new lines later, that's fine. But if I get bored with them, well, then, you know what, I can sell them off and start off with something new in that aquarium and challenge myself again. And that's kind of the rut. No, I wouldn't call it a rut, but the way I've been doing it, it's enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I'm more of a lazy breeder. I just, you know, I don't want to have to be pulling eggs out if I don't have to. I've done it just for the experience, where I want to see one if I could do it, and for that kind of challenge. But I'm not doing all the species that way. My biggest problem is I can't leave things be. I just can't. You know, all this rack behind me was supposed to be glass, you know, glass bare bottoms for breeding. That was the original. As you can see, that plan was out the window a long time ago. Because eventually I started going, well, I can do more stuff with this space. So I want to put plants in there. You know, I want to propagate other plants. And before you know it, I'm putting plants in there. And what I think the only thing that I've done to try to have a little bit of success to have them self-breed is that I have kept them species only. For the most part, that's not entirely true, because I do have shrimp in there. I have cold shrimps in a lot of these tanks, and but for the most part, it's like right now there'll only be that one species in there, and if they successfully breed in there, great, you know, and if they don't, then maybe when I have more time, I'll dedicate time to, because that's the whole thing with when you start breeding, intentional breeding, is you got to pull stuff, and then you got to observe it, and then you got to grow out the fry, and then so it's like this series of other steps that I really don't want to do.
Yeah.
So my whole breeding process for the most part is, if it breeds and it survives, great. You know, I'll do the water changes and I'll feed it. That's as much as I really want to get involved with a lot of the breeding. So I've resorted to putting a lot of like guppy grass or hornwort, stuff that'll give the fry maybe a little bit more success in growing out. Also, the idea of having that microfauna that the fry might be able to eat, because I'm not gonna, I don't, when I feed, it's the same thing for everybody. I'm not doing like specific feedings, like doing powdered for the few fry that are in there. No, I what the parents eat is what the fry will eat. I'm more of whatever's in the tank, whatever micro you know, ecosystems in there, that's what they're going to thrive on.
Absolutely.
What I've found, I don't get high yields of fry, but they're strong fry. And I don't know if that's more like now more like nature, because nature, that's why fish have big clutches, is because not everything is going to survive. Maybe out of 100 fish, if they get 20 to survive, that's success, you know, because stuff will get predated on, or they're not strong enough to survive.
Absolutely.
Give me a second. I'm going to close that garage door because it's getting cold. Wow. I thought it was getting cold. It's 79 degrees in here, so it's not that cold.
I'm not going to see 79 degrees again probably till May, June.
Yeah, no, I've got like a little fan acting as an extractor, and I guess because it's moving air around in here.
Sure.
Well, it's because, like I said, when I started, it was like in the 80s, so now it feels a little bit cooler. But no, it's not. I thought it was a lot colder than what it is. That's how bad we're accustomed to the higher temperatures down here.
Yeah.
Hey, one of the things that I've also found very interesting is I know you started doing live streams, and I've really been impressed with some of the guests you've been able to bring on. How's that been? Have you been able to, I guess, get another side of what you thought about the person once you get to talk to them and as a one-on-one? And has it been good or bad in most cases?
For the most cases, it's good. It's actually been very interesting. I've always been like I like watching live streams, but I typically don't have the time to sit for like 2 hours watching them half the time. I watch like some here, go back on replay when I get a chance to catch up on YouTube again and watch some more. And so I just never thought I would do live streams because I spend a lot. Videos will always be my number one bread and butter because I love making videos. It's a part I enjoy because I love watching them as well. So I spend a lot of time shooting videos and editing that I didn't want to at first throw a live stream on top of there too and cut into like family time and, you know, upset the wife or anything like that, that I'm spending too much time down here already than I am. So, but I wanted to be able, my channel to have the opportunity to potentially grow more. And I really felt that the only way that was going to be possible is to really start doing live streams, getting on here and talking to more people, interacting with more people. And so that's why I kind of made them in Sunday mornings as well, because I know at that point on Sundays, I'm never going to have to work. And at that time in the morning, if we have something family going on, it's typically not till after that. So I'm usually pretty good. So I decided to start doing it that way. And some of my first ones, it was fun, but it was very weird because I was just on by myself, talking by myself. And it's weird talking by myself. I don't know. It just feels awkward. But that's when I enjoyed having guests on. So that's kind of like trying to do that mostly. I will have some without guests once in a while too. But I just love talking to people. It's fun hearing their stories and getting to know them beyond the chat and the live streams, beyond the comments in the videos. Beyond just watching them in videos and actually get to actually know someone and talk a little bit more. So it's been a very cool experience. Tomorrow I have Kyle from Outside in Aquatics on. I'll be able to talk to him for a little bit. And
yeah, he's a fun guy.
Yeah. And then I got stuff planned this entire month. At the end of the month, I don't want to announce it yet, but I got a big guest coming on and super excited for it. So yeah, anyway, but yeah, it's fun. It's been but like I said, it's one of those things where I just got to be able to make sure it's not intruding on family time, and I'll continue them. I mean, after December, I may cut back to maybe twice a week. I don't know. We'll see. I know myself, though, that's never going to happen. I'm going to keep doing them every Sunday because I have an addiction problem when it comes to certain things like fish. It's like I should cut back. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, well, it's you'll continue to do that until you find it's the whole thing that I say is about having balance. You'll get to a point where it's like, all right, I think at this point now is where if I go beyond this, it's detrimental to what I'm doing. It's not working out. I'm having a little bit more issues, but you'll never know until you get to that point. So at one point I thought, it'd be so cool to have like 120 gallons. 120 tanks. Well, it sounds like a good idea. It sounds, like something cool until you start realizing how much work it really is. And then you start going, well, I can do it, but what are you giving up to be able to do that? So the other thing is I always thought that I wanted the biggest aquarium I could ever get. And it's a cool idea until the reality hits you is like, well, there's a lot of issues with having big aquariums. Is how do you move them? Unless you have, a group of friends on hand that can help you move stuff. I quickly found out that's not easily done. It's amazing how difficult it is to find, 6 guys that are not doing something on a given day to help you move something. It's just kind of like, and then I think now with the time that I have, even a 48-inch tank, I think it's about as big as I personally want to go. Because one of the things that I like to do is I like to put plants in them, and then trying to make them look prettier, and it costs money if you want to go out and buy a bunch of plants right off the bat to get it set up. Where I could take a 10-gallon tank and probably spend $50 in plants and make it look like it's, this really heavily planted aquarium. Or I can take trimmings from my other aquariums and not spend that money and be able to set that up. Or a 20-gallon. Oh. You start going bigger than that, and it starts getting costly if you want to keep planted aquariums.
Yeah.
If you're just keeping, like the other fish that you usually keep in big tanks, and that was the other thing. I wanted a big tank, but I wasn't going to keep the big the big fish. I wanted to keep a bunch of smaller fish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you start adding up the cost of each, you don't think about it like, oh, it's only $3. Well, but you get a 300-gallon aquarium, and to get a size of a school that'll fit in there, you got to get a couple hundred of those fish so that they can stand out. And, at $3 a pop, it starts getting pretty pricey.
Expensive, yeah.
Unless you figure out how to breed them, then it's just a matter of, I don't have a problem with waiting though. That's the one thing that I've been very fortunate. I can be pretty patient, and I've had tanks that have been set up for 3 or 4 years, and they just kind of evolved and matured, and now getting to the point where you can see the plants that I finally put in there.
Nice.
Whereas for the longest time, you're like, what the hell did you put in there? There's nothing, I can't see anything in there.
Yeah. Patience is a downfall of mine. Typically, I've been learning to use it a little bit more down here. Especially like with my Oscar tank here, I had cloudy water that was beyond cloudy. It was just so thick you couldn't see nothing in it for a good 3 months. Finally, like, this is the thing with all my dirted aquariums. I shouldn't say all of them. Typically, within the first weeks, the first couple months, I get cloudy water in them, and it usually lasts anywhere from weeks, sometimes months. And you can do whatever you want to them. You can change water, which you shouldn't. That's not going to help because it's going to come right back. You can use UV sterilizers, and it may help right away, but if it's not balanced out yet, that problem's still there. It's going to come back. There's really nothing you can do, in my opinion, that I've found besides just waiting it out. And that's kind of what this one was. It sucked for so long. It's just like, it's just big cloudy. All I could see was the fish swimming here. Couldn't even see the plants in the back for the most part. And then it just all of a sudden, like they happen in all of them overnight. Come down here, crystal clear.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing, especially when you go with the no filter tanks.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, and it's not that there's the water is the same. What's in the tanks is relatively the same, and yet you'll have some that are crystal clear, and then there's some where you just keep scratching your head. It's like, why is this thing still cloudy? Mm-hmm. I've set it up exactly like I've done all the others, but I've got 2 tanks like that. One of them is where I have some cories in there, and that has that white haze like that. It's just a bacterial bloom. Mm-hmm. And I have one where I have the mollies, and I'm going, my instinct is I want to do something, but I got to remember, just as long as the fish are healthy and they're fine, at this point, it's just wait it out. It'll eventually balance itself out. And I think that's the hardest tank when you're doing the hardest part when you're doing filterless aquariums is you got to let it go. You got to let it go, let it do its thing. And then once it hits that point, it's set. I mean, you don't have to ever worry about it, but you got to give it time.
Yeah, I got that in my 20-gallon tank I set up this summer. I got those King Yama, like red-orange rice fish in there. It went cloudy probably like a month ago, and it's super cloudy. It's like I can just see the plants in the front that are at the top of the water. I could barely see the big piece of wood in there, and the fish that are orange I can see when they come up to the front. That's about it, but like I said, it's waiting for it to take its course, then it'll go away, and then it's going to be like, because I love that tank. When I first set that up, and the plants still grow crazy in there. I have to trim them like every other week tops, and I would love the look of it, but it's like now I can't even enjoy it and look at it until it balances itself out. Then it's going to be awesome again. It was the same with this one, with the Oscar tank. It's like I was just waiting. When it opened up and got cleared up, I'm like, holy crap, that's what my plants look like. It's been so long.
Well, it's funny because I get a lot of comments. It was like, are you running a UV system in that tank? Why is the water so clear? I'm not doing anything to it. It's established. That tank you're looking at there has been up and running for about 4 years. It takes you a while to be able to get that without having to use anything else. I mean, you could try and use all these other things, but again, it goes to what you just said. Not until it reaches its maturity and balance. You could throw a ton of money at the problem. It's not going to fix it.
Oh, it's got to fix itself.
So of the videos, so I know that's one of the things that admire about what you do with your channel is you do put out a lot of content, and the content is videos. But which has been so far your most controversial video that you've put out, where people just kind of go, that's not gonna work?
Oh, yeah, the Oscar tank by far. I hear that all the time. And you know what? They may very well be right. I don't know yet. Like I said, it was an experiment. When I first got this tank, my idea was to make it an all natural tank. I wanted to grab everything from the wild. I even contacted the Wisconsin DNR to see, hey, is it legal for me to go out to a local lake or whatever to take plants and stuff to put them in here? They were like, well, technically no, but I told them I had a YouTube channel and I wanted to set up this tank. And they're like, well, if you're only taking a bucket or so full, that's fine. Just don't put anything back into the lakes if you're done. And I said, that's fine. Well, my whole point was I wanted a big stump in the middle of it because it's a taller tank. And I couldn't find that stump for the longest time. I was searching for like the whole beginning of summer. So I finally gave up and washed my hands of it. And I'm like, okay, we're going a different route. I'm dirtying this tank. It's a dirty tank, no filter, no air like all my other ones. But what can I put in here that people say you can't do? I want to challenge myself. Like I said before, I like to challenge myself with this stuff. And I was like, you know what? I love Oscars. I haven't had an Oscar for years. What can I do to make this successful? So that's when I was doing some digging, and I saw some people were using egg crate in their substrate. I'm like, okay, now that will definitely prevent it from ever hitting that dirt layer. So that's great. So I got my dirt, then I have about an inch of sand, and then I have the egg crate down and a few more inches of sand over it. So if he ever decides he wants to try to dig down, he's never going to hit the dirt. So that solves that part. Okay. Now it's the plants. So now that's going to be the biggest one. Is it going to rip the plants out eventually? Well, my idea with that is you get the fish little and young. So it's in there from the very beginning and it's used to these plants. Like if you get like a bigger semi-adult one that's already been in tanks without plants and you throw it in there, it's probably not going to know what the heck it is and it's going to thrash and destroy everything. So my idea was to put it in there young and see how it works. So far it's been good. Now it's only, when did I set this up? I set it up probably in like June or something like that. And he's probably, I don't know what is this, probably like 6 months old. He's probably about 6 inches long. So he's got a lot of growing to do yet. So we'll see once he hits maturity, if he decides to be a butthead and want to rip crap up. I don't know. So it is possible. So yes, I hear a lot of slack from that. There's a local fish store owner up in Green Bay because I share all my videos on Facebook. And he's like, I know you're having fun at him, but you know it's never going to work. He's going to wind up betting and destroying everything. I'm like I said, I didn't say it's going to for sure work. It's all experiment. If I can get it to work, great. And I'm showing something. If it don't, you know what? I went into it knowing it's a possibility it might not work. So, we'll just have to go with it as it is. But so far, knocking on wood here, it's been loving the plants. It loves hiding in it, thriving in it. But like I said, we'll see in the coming months. By next summer, we'll see if it's still doing the way it's doing.
Yeah, because I know I was one of those people that would always say, you can do a planet tank, but you probably won't be able to keep a big cichlid in there. Oscars was always one of the ones that I would reference. And I'm so glad you're doing it, because now I get to find out if I was full of it, because I had never done it. I was just going off of assumptions again. The only thing that I really think you might have a problem with might be that the body just gets way too big. And then when it turns, it might, but I don't think it's going to necessarily tear them out. But I'm pulling for you, man. I hope it works, because then it'll prove me wrong and I'll be happy, because now I learned something new that, somebody out there, I can reference somebody going, yeah, that's not true. I know so-and-so that does it.
I had an Oscar years ago. I was actually in this 75 when I used to have it upstairs before I had a channel and everything. I had plants in, not initially, but I put them in later. And it was mostly like pogo stem and stellatus octopus and some like cheap, easy plants in there. And he left them alone for the most part, but sometimes he'd get bucky and he'd swim through and just take a mouthful and go on. Wasn't terrible with them though, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, we'll see. I mean, it was the same thing when I set this up with my Fahaka puffer. I wanted to do it with a dirty tank. I'm like, you know what? I pulled the filter out of it initially before it was dirty when it was upstairs. And I wanted to see really, because my biggest thing was whenever I pulled my filters out with these deeper substrates, I found that I would never find nitrates in my aquariums anymore. They just disappeared. And I did that upstairs when it was up there without a dirt, and I had probably about, I don't know, about like 3 inches of substrate in there, 3.5 maybe. And I wasn't finding any nitrates again. So like, this is weird. So I want to put this thing in dirt. I want to try a dirted aquarium with this guy. But puffers are known for burying themselves in the sand and that. So my guy really never dug himself a lot. He would like halfway dig himself in. So I thought I'd be okay. So what I did with this one is I just put a thicker sand cap on top. So I still got my like inches of dirt, but I got closer to 4 inches of sand on top. So that way, if he would decide to dig himself in there more, potentially wouldn't hit that dirt. And he hasn't now for over a year. What he likes to do, because he's so used to the tank when he was upstairs, it was infested with Malaysian trumpet snails. So he would go and he blows into the sand. So it's like, and he blows like little holes in the sand to try to find the snails to eat them. He still does that to this day. He goes around all the rocks and the plants just blowing. So I see these little pockets of holes everywhere, but it never goes deep enough ever to hit the dirt. So like this was my first experiment with like the whole dirty tank with the bigger fish, and no filters on either of them, no air in either of them. And again, I don't register nitrates in any of these aquariums when I test. I don't test that often, but the few times I have, because I set them up and people are going to ask, I haven't found any, and I haven't done a water change in these tanks in probably close to 4 months. So, and I found actually not doing the water changes helped me a great more deal as well. My puffer tank, I was dealing with cyanobacteria and a stringy hair algae for the longest time, and it was just ticking me off. Or the cyano, I was using erythromycin to get rid of it. It would come right back. And I'm like, okay, then I'm trying to like research cyanobacteria a little bit more, kind of more into like what's causing it. Well, then you get into that rabbit hole of Google of like 10 million different things that cause it. So I'm trying to eliminate like one thing at a time and trying to figure it out. And it went away eventually, and then it came back. And then finally I was blocking out the tank for a while. That would work. Then it come back. I was like, finally, I'm like, I had it. This crap could just stay there. Just let it grow. I'll just turn the light. I usually have all my lights at 100% intensity on all of them. I turn this one down a little bit. I think at maybe 70%, 65, something like that. And I'm just like, that's it. I'm just going to leave it. It's going to be what it's going to be, and it'll run its course. Sure enough, freaking probably like a month later, cyanobacteria disappeared. That hair algae is not completely gone, but it has drastically went away and is righting itself. Like all the algae on the glass sides of the glass started to go away. I'm just like, there's something to just leaving things alone and sticking your hands in there. I think Father Fish said it when I had him on my live stream about the worst thing people can do is stick your hands in the aquarium sometimes. And it's not so much really just sticking your hands. It means screwing around with the crap in your tanks. Let them do their own nature, their own course, and figure themselves out. And was good, actually good advice.
Yeah, I think the very first Planet Aquarium that I did, that was my biggest problem. Was I didn't understand the growth of certain plants, so the placement was in the wrong place. So you go in there and try to move them, and you try to move them to the back, and then I don't care how careful I was trying to be about removing them. When they really have that big root system in the bottom, you're going to end up pulling some of that dirt to the top. So the very first Planet Aquarium with dirt substrate ended up being a mess because, again, I kept putting my hands in there and just kind of, trying to, but it was all a learning process because I didn't know. I knew stem plants, I would buy them as being like mid-level, but they would get really tall. And I was like, well, maybe it would be more of a background plant. And in the process of doing that, you disturb that aquarium. Now it's got to the point where I've got a pretty good handle on how plants grow, at least the very few plants that I do keep, because I don't keep a lot of plants. I keep the plants that work for me, that I have success with, which is Jungle Val. I've got some Rotella, some Luigia, some Bacopa, and some swords and stuff like that. The very, I guess you would call them low tech, because I don't run CO2. I don't run none of these high power lights. Most of my lights are just shop lights, LED shop lights, and that's what I run on there. And I've had success, but then again, I've learned now not to be messing with it. I leave it alone. I'll trim them, and just propagate them. That's all I do.
Yep.
But I don't really find myself pulling plants out that often anymore.
Yeah, I don't for the most part. Now, a lot of times my dorsage will grow and propagate to the front of the tanks. And I usually like to have like a little bit of an opening in the front for the fish to be able to see them and have a little bit of swimming room. So I'll pull them out. But with the tricks I've learned with the dirty tanks is when I take the plant, especially like that dorsage or whatever, the sand I have is a beach sand. So it's almost like the play sand consistency. It's not real heavy. I just take it by the base in front of the sand and I just gently kind of like swirl it, and the sand kind of fills that hole, backfills it as you pull it out. So I typically don't have too much of a dirt experience by pulling plants. But that being said, not a while back, I had an Amazon sword in one of my 29s that got monstrous, and it was taking up the entire tank, cutting out the light the entire tank. I barely could see anything else. I'm like, I got to get it out of here. So I pulled that thing out, and my tank was black. You're looking at midnight, no stars, no moon, no nothing. You see nothing. And I learned my lesson there because someone in one of the comments said, which makes sense now, and I'll do this in the future if I ever have a big plant like that. Cut the thing off. If you don't want it, cut the thing off underneath the sand a little bit or right before it and bury it, and just let the roots die off inside the substrate if it would, and it just feeds back to the soil instead of ripping that all out of there. So that's something I would do next time. But I put a few swords in here stupidly about a month ago just because I had them in my summer tub, and I'm like, they'll be fine in there. Well, we'll see what happens. With those though, I might just trim them down real far and let them grow back then from the base if that really happens, and see what happens. I don't know, but it's all a challenge and an experiment, Jorge.
Yeah, it is, and you just start learning as it goes along. One of the things that I did with a tank, I like breaking rules. I'm not. The worst thing you can do is tell me not to do something. That's like the worst thing. My wife's figured that out. She just kind of, if it's something that she really doesn't want me to mess with, she just won't say nothing because then I'll leave it alone. But I actually had a tank, and it's still set up that way. I planted everything, the entire whole front, and then I have like half of it is from front to back is nothing but jungle val, and then I left an open space. And what's cool is you see a different behavior from the fish than when you just have them all up in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been real interesting. I was like, oh, okay. And I like it because to me, in my mind, it's more like a cutout of what would be on a place where they had plants, because usually up along the banks is where you'll have all the plants.
Mm-hmm.
And as you progress to the middle of the water, body of water, then you don't have it. It's more of an open area. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of see that behavior where the fish will stay within the plants, and I'll purposely feed in the open area, and then they'll come out and eat, and they'll interact, and whoop, then they go back into the plants. And once in a while you'll see them dart out, chase after something, and then they go back in. So that to me has been something that's a little bit of a different experience that I've seen. And I do have some mollies in there, and it works out great for the fry too. It gives them a place to hide out, and I'm seeing more fry in there now than I had seen before until I set it up that way.
Yeah, it makes sense. Definitely. Like if you keep all your plants in the back of your tank, it's almost the opposite of what you're doing, like in nature as well, where they'd be hiding in the plants back there because that's probably their natural instinct is to be hiding in the plants, not in the open water.
Yeah, and what I like about this is that I can actually see them in the plants when I have it this way. When they're in the back, it's harder to see them.
Absolutely.
And this way I get to see what they're doing when they're hiding in the plants, and they're scavenging, they're going in, they'll swim all the way to the bottom and they'll look for whatever, I guess, worms or whatever's in there. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing that I discovered too, is that I have worms in tanks that I never put worms in. It's just, I don't know if it's stuff that is coming on the plants, on the roots of the plants. Like most of my jungle val, if I pull it out, I'm going to have red worms in them. Mm-hmm. These little long red worms. And so, that's something that I've just let it sit there over the course of time. And I don't know if it's eggs that were in the soil that I used, and now that they're in water, they've kind of hatched and They just so happen to be aquatic worms because they're not coming out of the water.
I mean, it's crazy to think about the life that can come from like nothing. Like for
Mm-hmm.
instance, I have, if I can grab it, I have a jar. Okay, I put leaves from outside, dry leaves that were never in water. I put them in this jar with a little bit of tap water, and I rang out. I had a little pre-filter that was this big that I had on a power head that I had in my Rainbow Shiner tank for a while. Squeezed it out in there, and then I let it, and this thing is just full of cyclops. Like I said, it's fascinating how nature works. You know what I mean? So like with those worms, same thing. I have another aquarium too, my 20-gallon that's cloudy. A few times I'll look on the glass and there's hundreds of these tiny little white worms. They're not planaria, by the way, but they're little worms. And I'm just like, how did they get there? I didn't put them in there. I don't have a food web in that aquarium. So where they came from, whether it's the wood, whether it's the substrate in the soil that they just were in there and grew from, I don't know. Like, I'm not. I'll say this many times, and I have already in my live streams and channels. I am not a scientist. I don't know everything. A lot of the science stuff that I learn is by reading or listening to other people. My way of doing things is basically by experience and what I see with my own two eyes. And that's where I kind of learn from it. And like I said, I can't explain it, but it's pretty cool.
One of the things that I learned about setting up little jars, I had set up a while back, like a 1 gallon, one of those round jars. I think it had like pork rinds in it or whatever. And I set it up like that, but it had no, that was my first venture into going completely filterless. I mean, I kind of knew the theory. I've been watching Lucas for a long time. I've been watching Father Fish, and then I came across this before I even came across your channel. And but I set it up, and it was kind of cool because it's amazing how much life you can create. And all I had in there, I think I had just shrimp because I wasn't sure to put fish in there. And I started seeing detritus worms, and it would be crazy because I'd be sitting here and I'd watch it. And all of a sudden you see like a colony of little worms that are bobbing back and forth. They're just kind of waving in there. And then you start looking in there and you got all these little, organisms that are swimming back and forth. I had scuds in there. I don't know where I got, they came on plants that I put in there, but yeah, it's amazing how much life is in all these systems that we never really, unless you vigilantly sit there and pay attention to it, it goes unnoticed.
Yeah.
And once I started seeing that, it gave me a lot more confidence too. What happens if I go away for a weekend, and I don't feed the fish, and are they gonna? Because that was always a concern. It's like, wow, I don't want to get away. I don't want to go away for this weekend because I don't have anybody to feed my fish room. And then finally one day I said, you know what? I'm not going to be tied down by my fish room because my wife and I like to travel, not necessarily like overseas or anything like that, but we like to go places. And usually it'd be like a 3-day weekend getaway or something like that. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to have to bite the bullet on this one and see what happens. It came back. Everything was fine. Yep. So then you start getting a little bit braver and you go, all right, well, I know I did it for a 3-day weekend. Now I'm going to do it a week, but I'll be here. I just won't feed them. I'll come and check them out. And I'm here. If I see things start going south, then I'm here to take action. Let it run for a week. Nothing happened. And then I said, all right, well, we got to go see our daughter. We had about 5 days vacation. I said, let's go. It made it easy to travel. And then finally we decided to travel to Mexico for 2 weeks. And I said, okay, this is where this is the furthest that I've pushed it. And I'm going to see how that comes out. Well, come to find out that the least you do with your aquariums, the nicer they become. The water was pristine and all of these aquariums, I mean, crystal clear. Because I wasn't feeding. If I wasn't feeding, the fish weren't disturbing anything. So the water, everything, whatever particulates were in the water just settled down. And, obviously my fish most of the fish that I keep are omnivores, and I have duckweed and a lot of them. So come to find out, if the fish get hungry, Well, they're going to nibble at stuff. They're going to nibble on the algae in your aquarium. They're going to nibble at the floating plants you have up there. I did notice that a lot of the duckweed was missing the little roots that would come off of it because they were eating those, and that's how they stayed alive. So now it's like, hell yeah, this is the hobby I want to be in, where I can keep these aquariums, let them do what they're going to do, and I can still get away for whatever time it is and be confident that I'm going to come back and things are going to be okay. The only worst thing that's going to happen is if a fish jumps out, because I don't keep tops on any of my aquariums.
Okay.
And come to find out, Lucas was saying that it's with no filter tanks. He recommends you do that because I guess you need to have that gas exchange. I don't know how much of that is true or not.
Yeah,
but
most of mine are covered, mostly because of being winters here. But I have a few that have. I put egg crate on the top, so there's ventilation in there, but it also stops the fish from jumping out unless they're really small. So I got egg crate on the Oscar tank too. I'd been meaning to get. See, I was going to actually get a cover for this thing, but they wanted freaking way too much money for the dang thing for this tank. I said, screw that. I can get freaking egg crate for like $12 and I'll cut it on there. But yeah, that's what I do. But I get what he's saying. It makes sense. You want that kind of airflow in there to be able to do that. And but back to the feeding, I feel like that is one of the subjects that we are kind of like drilled home and taught in the very beginning of things. You have to feed your fish all the time. You can't keep tanks without filters. You can't keep tanks without air, or they're all going to die. I think a lot of the ways that we're taught and learned from are basically all from marketing, from manufacturers that want to sell product. That's my opinion anyway, and the way I take it from. Now, there may be some instances where that's not true. If you have a tank that's bare bottom and you keep all monster fish, yeah, you're going to want freaking no plants. You're going to want filters. You're going to want to feed your fish. You're not going to be able to go probably 2 weeks without feeding them unless you mass feed them before you leave. So there are some to it, but for a lot of the people that keep normal aquariums like we do, for the most part, I feel like a lot of that's just a way to try to get you to buy more fish food or buy these fish feeders that, stuff like that. But I think we definitely could let fish go for quite a while and be able to survive and not really have to worry about it, because there are so many resources in our aquariums themselves. So especially for smaller fish.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I can't say that that's going to work for people that keep the bigger fish, because I don't keep big fish. All my fish, I think currently right now, the biggest fish that I have in my aquariums is going to probably be the angelfish. That's the biggest body fish that I have. And then everything is smaller after that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm kind of interested to see with like your Oscar that you have, and you have that Fajaka puffer, they're pretty big body fish. But I'm also pretty sure that if you weren't to feed that in a few days and they get hungry, they're gonna turn to the survival instinct is incredible. It's the reason why people that get stranded in the middle of the woods for days on end, they start foraging. You start looking at roots and berries and other stuff you find in nature. It's not your first choice. But you're gonna do what you need to do to survive.
Yeah, I 100% believe my Oscar and my Fajaka, if I would not feed them for a few days, would probably destroy their tanks out of being more pissed off they weren't being fed more than anything. There's actually a funny story. My Fajaka, he's hiding now, but he's usually up here begging for food and thrashing at the top of the water every single day. And I don't feed him every day. I feed him probably like every 3 or 4 days. And I was at work the other day, and my light that I have has a temperature probe sensor in it that detects if there's a high or low temperature. It sends off an alarm. And I also have a heater that has a temperature controller on it that was also alarm. Well, my wife messaged me and she's like, well, your tank is beeping. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, go over there. And she went on FaceTime and showed me that was the controller for the light. I'm like, well, that's weird. I said, that's a temperature thing. I said, look at the controller up above. She's like, she showed me. I'm like, well, that's right. I said, well, the probe just must be out of the water. Well, I came home, it's still beeping, and I have a few guppies in this tank with it, just to kind of eat up on some of the algae and stuff. I never feed the guppies in this tank. They eat off of any of the scraps from the Fajaka or anything they find laying around. Well, that temperature probe had a bite mark in it. So I'm assuming he was probably going after one of those guppies and got a hold of that wire. And then the first thing that popped into my mind is Jaws 2. How they killed Jaws was biting that electrical wire and electrocuted it. I could just see the thing going, but he's fine. But yeah, that was the first thing. So Yeah, I'm assuming he probably was trying to eat one of those guppies. So, he'll eat anything in that tank if I leave it in there long enough, and he gets pissed off. That Fahaka is very temperamental, I guess I could say. You can put stuff in there and he'll be completely fine with them, but then just like that, you won't even know when they're gone. So you can never put anything expensive in there. I learned the hard way. I had put a small angelfish in there probably, I think it was this summer. My daughter actually even nicknamed it Dave, and I put it in there. It was probably like that big. I had actually grew that one out and hatched it from an angel pair I had earlier, and it was the only one I had survive. And I'm like, okay, I got to move it. I can't keep it in the tank it's in anymore. I had it in a 10-gallon. I said, I need to put it in a bigger tank, but I don't want to put it in any of my other tanks. It's going to eat the fry. So I'm like, well, I'll put it in here. He seems to be doing good with these other fish now. Put him in there, and they were fine for like over a week. Like he'd sit there, angelfish would come by and get some of the scraps from the Fahaka, and you wouldn't pay two minds to him. Came down here one day, and all of a sudden the angelfish was just gone. Someone asked me about it in the comments. I think it was in my video I had about 2 weeks ago. They're like, "Where's Dave?" I said, "Well, this is the story." I said, either he jumped out, grew wings, and flew away because I never found a body, or my Fahaka puffer ate him. So I learned that lesson with them. But yeah, they'll eat anything or destroy things, in my opinion, because they're so used to being fed by me. They're like my little puppies when I come down here. They both are at the glass thrashing for food every single day I come down here. And when they don't get it, especially this guy, he gets ticked off. Like he'll just thrash and thrash and thrash and bite at the glass.
Now, are you set up in a way right now where you could actually kind of show us some of the tanks you have?
A little bit possibly. I've got no, we could try to show you some of them. I might have some glare, so let's see. Can I flip this camera somewhere here? No, that's not it. How do you get off of that? Can you flip the camera on this one? I know I can when I have it. Well, we'll just do it this way. I don't know how well it's going to show. He is hiding down here now. He is a big baby typically, except for when he wants food. Like I said, if you could see all the little potholes in the soil, like I can't see what I'm shooting now because I don't got the camera flipped. So hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
He blows those little holes in there all the time. And there's a few little guppies in there that hide up in the plants, and he'll go after them once in a while. And then the Oscar over here, who's nicknamed Sparkles, like I said, he's been doing pretty good. The plants are really thick in here. He likes to hide in the back. Got this opening here, and like I said, I've had no issues with him yet. I do have wave makers in this tank and the puffer tank. Those are the only two I have them in. And I only have them in there for circulating some of the air with the heaters, because I find that, especially there in these winter months, it's so cold down at the bottom without it, and all the heat, obviously, because heat rises, it's all warm up here. So I have them on timers. So like every half hour, or a half hour for every 2 hours, they run and just circulate the water a little bit within the aquariums to help out with that.
Oh, speaking of which,
sure,
I wanted to ask you on your plants, because I know you're kind of set up the same way I am. I've always heard that plants need water movement for them to be able to grow, but I'm looking at your tank and I'm looking at mine. I sometimes don't necessarily want to believe that that's the case. Do you see a difference in these, that you have these plants with the wave makers versus your other ones where you don't have any water movement?
No, actually none at all. They both grow they both grow the same as far as I can tell. I haven't had no issues with either. They both, like I said, I could trim the plants in this thing all the time as well. It's been a little slower grower in my puffer tank. Like I said, that one's just been a little weird since I set it up. I didn't put a lot of stem plants in here to begin with, which is a big no-no. And I suffered with it. And then, I don't know, like the stuff at the top will grow pretty good. But the stuff, I don't know, it's just not growing the greatest in here, but it is growing. So I think over time, as it's starting to balance more, and it's been up a year already, it should get better and better. But yeah, I haven't had any issues with that. Up here are a few projects and a lot of kind of nano stuff I set up.
Let me stop you. One more question before you move on.
Sure, sure.
And that's I know the story behind the name, but why Sparkles?
Oh, okay. So what it was is when I got the fish, I thought, what the heck? I'll have people in the comments name the fish for me. Okay. And I think it was Gil from Gil's Fish Room came up with Sparkles. And he decided he wanted to run with it and get that to be the name. And Chris Stubbings was on another from Stubbs Aquatics, was on another live stream, and they got in there and started talking about it in that live stream and got everybody in that live stream to come to that video and comment Sparkles. So Sparkles was the highest commented name for this fish, so that's its name. And wound up, my daughter loved the name anyway, so it was fine. So that might be the last time I have a fish named by other people, because I actually have another tank I'm going to be getting an axolotl eventually, and that Gil actually made a comment, are you going to be doing that for that too? I'm like, if I do, I'm not letting you know about it. So, but yeah, so that's how it's named, Sparkles. Up here is a few like nano stuff, and these are those Matano rice fish eggs. I have 2 in here, and then these are just a couple jars that I have that are all dirted with plants in. This is just, I'm growing out some rice fish fry platinum ones that I got from Scott from Raising Fishes. I have them in here with this really cool auto feeder I got from Higer, which, yes, I know I was talking about feeders before, how the market gets you. I get it. But this is cool because it's got a camera on it, and I can watch the fish, and I can feed this thing from work. So I use it for feeding the fry like 3 times a day, and I can set it on the schedule or be at work at my break and watch the fish and feed them. So I found that to be kind of cool. And then this is a video that's going to be out next week. This is actually you heard of the resurrection jars. This is the resurrection tank. I took an entire jar, big gallon jar full of resurrection material from the local waterway, put some sand in it and a few plants in the back, and threw it in there. And I want this to be kind of here long-term and permanent. And I want to see long-term what happens in here. So the goal will be to be able to take leaves out of here eventually and add them to my aquariums, and then add more leaves into it and let all the microorganisms and macroorganisms grow and culture within this aquarium. So that's the long-term goal with it. If it happens or not, we'll see. So
with your resurrection jars, do you get a lot of unwanted hitchhikers like nymphs and stuff like that? Has that been a problem for you?
I've never seen nymphs. The only things I have ever found are those damn sci-fi planaria worm.
Oh.
Other than that, no. There's some bugs I saw one scud in here. I've seen some other bugs. I can't remember what they're called anymore. I got it in the video. I looked it up. If you're ever not sure about something you see, I will tell this, the Fatherfish Discord channel, that thing has so much useful information. There is an identification guide in there. That's where I look up things if I'm not sure what's in here to figure out what it is. They'll tell you if it's good or bad, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's that little project wall. And then I've got just my tanks over here. This is all my guppies that were out in my summer tubs. Now, you always talk about how you can't overstock your aquariums, especially.
I was just going to make a comment about that.
Yeah. I always hear like, oh, if you're running a no filter and dirted aquarium, you can't keep many fish in there. You got to have low stock. Okay, I've got hundreds and hundreds of guppies in here. And that's just the front. They're in the back too. So, yeah, I'll probably be selling some of those off at that swap meet in February. People like these mixed guppies with these colors on them and stuff like that. So, and Christmas season, got a couple decorations. These are Taiwanese orange green double sword guppies. Now, the story with these are I bought them at a local fish store a while back, and they were labeled as a Japanese double sword Endler. And when I started the channel and I put some of them on there, a person reached out to me on Facebook, and she asked if I got them at that local fish store. And she said she actually sold them to him, and she told him that they were these guppies, and he didn't believe it, so he put them on here anyway. And she showed me where she ordered them from. They're actually bred by some he's like a master breeder out of Taiwan, and I think she bought them a trio for like almost like 30 some bucks. So I was like, oh, okay, that's a big difference. So they're really cool. When the males start to mature, you get these real long fins on them, which are really cool. But That's one of my older dirter tanks. This is that really cloudy one. Remember, I told you can't even see in it.
Yeah.
That's what's going on with those rice fish in there. I'm looking forward to the day that clears up. Now, this is my oldest dirter tank, the first one I ever set up. Let me see if I could fix the camera here. I don't know what you can see. These have the Matano rice fish in them. This is about 5 years old. It's got a lot of dorsage in it and these crypts in the back. I just kind of like the look of the contrast between the green and the brown. Those rice fish hide quite a bit. They're very skittish. I used to have them in a different tank, and I got them stopped being skittish where they'd come up to the front, and then I moved them into here, and then now it's just starting the whole process over. But those crypts are just going everywhere in here too, which I absolutely love. I got little shoots and all in the back. Absolutely love that plant.
Now with the rice fish, I was under the impression that they lay their eggs on these little floating roots of plants. Have you found that to be necessarily true? I mean, or how are you doing with the eggs for them to, I guess, for the rice fish to lay their eggs?
I just started with the rice fish not too long ago. What they'll do is they have like a cluster of eggs that'll be on their belly that are like sticky, and they'll rub them off onto plants, floating plants, stuff like that. So typically when people want to breed them, they'll have them in a container that probably doesn't have like a lot of plants or anything in it, and you only put like a spawning mop on, and they'll rub them off onto there, and then you collect them. Where this type of tank, I'm hoping that they do it somewhat naturally. If I see some eggs offhand, like I said, I found those couple, I'll pull them out. But for the most part, it's just they'll probably rub them off. And any of the plants in there, I found some, because this tank gets a little bit of algae along the light line on the top. Like maybe see over here. I've seen a couple in there before. So, so yeah, they'll rub them off like that, and that's how you collect them.
Do you find that they predate on the fry?
From these 100%. When I was talking to Lucas on one of his live streams, I was asking about them, and he said that they are very big predators on their fry. So you're going to have, he breeds them in his tanks, he said, but it's better to have a heavier planted tank, because obviously that's going to have a bit more success for them to survive. So that's why my number one goal always is to try to breed these fish, almi fish, kind of naturally within their aquariums without having to intervene. But if I do, I will. So, and then I got my other rack over here. Adjust the camera. This is those platies, hyphen, blue coral variaties, whatever. This tank is overrun with my dorsage. But I used to have guppy grass that freaking completely and utterly infiltrates this this aquarium, and I have to pull it out every week. But I've been liking the really full look in this one. It's been kind of cool. I like these fish. They're really colorful, but kind of getting bored with them, which happens to me quite a bit. And I have swordtails down here. This is the tank that those Matano rice fish used to be in. But I moved them and I put these guys in here so they had a little bit more room. And I keep putting clippings of Ludwigia in here, and just keeps filling in more and more and more. So I don't have a lot of them in here, but this is another one I might part with and try to find a different species to put in. And let's see. This is the rainbow shiners, where I only have 4 left. I have one female and 3 male. I was trying to breed them outside in a 10-gallon tank, and 3 of them died. And I found out from the comments, because I really wasn't sure what happened to them, that I believe the flow from the power head I had in there was just too strong for them. I had them in a basket, and they really had nowhere to hide, so they must have died from stress, and really nowhere to hide from the flow. So I learned my lesson with that one. And I was supposed to get some of these from Branton Lightcap today, but things got sidetracked. My wife wound up having to be on call and work today, so I had to be with my daughter, so I didn't have a chance to get down by him. I was really excited to get some of these guys from him, so it'll just have to be another time, because I was going to get some shrimp from him too, and I was going to put him in this little nano aquarium I set up just the other day, so that'll have to hold off as well. And then I had a white cloud tank down here. This thing, I've been battling with a haze of cloudyish water, but this tank's been up for a while. I bred a lot of the white clouds that are in here. I started with 10. These guys too, I had a tragedy outside this summer. I tried breeding them outside, and all of them except for one jumped out of the tubs. I had them in there within the first 2 hours. I had them in there, found them dead, freaking dried up in the summer sun outside the tub, which sucked. So I started breeding them inside, and it's a little bit of work. I can't community breed them for some reason. They won't breed in their tanks. They'll predate them, I'm assuming, as well. And I have crap tons of red lily shrimp in here, and a bunch of mulm that I can't seem to get under control, which hindsight, I really don't care, but it's nice not to have all that in there, but the fish like it. That's a good gut biome or whatever it's called, where they'll eat out of that. You can see the shrimp eating in there. The fish will eat out of it. There's all kinds of microorganisms within it, so it's really not a bad thing at all.
What are you doing? What are you doing with the white clouds? How are you putting egg catchers and removing out the eggs?
No, with these guys, I'll take a few out and I'll put them in another aquarium, which I've been experimenting. The one time I had success is I put some of that egg crate. I'll put some of that at the bottom of a small aquarium, like that 5-gallon I showed you earlier that I have those rice fish fry in. And what I do is I'll put rocks on top of that, and I'll put them in there, and they spawn in the mornings, and you put like some Java moss or whatever in there. They'll drop their eggs and they fall down into that egg crate where they can't get at it. And then I'll pull the fish out like a day or two later, and then leave it for a couple weeks, and some fry will wind up popping up. And that's how I worked it with these guys too. I currently have, if I can show you over here, I have 3 of them in this tank here right now. I have 2 10-gallons underneath here, which are little breeding project ones. I have a male and 2 females in here. I try to community breed them. It doesn't really work. Smaller groups like this, I was told it's easier. I haven't seen any with these guys yet, but I have seen them when I had other fishing here in the past. I get a couple. But yeah, that's how I do them. I want to get a bigger clutch of them for this summer, because I would like to put them in my big 110-gallon or 100-gallon summer tub outside and keep white clouds out there. And this is my 55-gallon tank here that is not dirted. It's my only one of my ones down here that have substrate that is not dirted. It's all sand. My idea with this one was this. Well, first, this is where the axolotl is going to go once we eventually get it. My idea with this one is to be able to have plants in here and do it the same way I would do my dirted tanks. I don't want to use fertilizers. I want to do everything the exact same way and see how the plants and things react to this tank not having that compared to the dirt. So we'll see how that goes. I took this big pond lily out from my summer tubs and put it in here, which is kind of cool. And the water's a little hazy right now because it's still going through its little balancing act that we all know about. So, but yeah, and I like this tank too because I can look at from the other side. And hang on, if I can go through here, and you can see the fish through. Oops. Through the tank. It's cloudy right now, but it's awesome to come in here and see that look. I really love that. That's pretty much my fish room in a nutshell.
Nice. So yeah, so I guess you go about breeding fish the same way I do. But I just call it lazy because I don't want to have to be pulling out eggs and stuff like that. The white clouds have been the one species that I've been trying to breed, but I've done everything except put egg traps in there, try to catch them and pull them out. I'm hoping that I can get enough guppy grass in one of them where I might not. I don't want to have to do anything. I just want them to be able to. But I know they're known fry predators. They'll eat all their fry.
Yeah.
Although I managed to get one to survive once where I was doing them in a heavily planted tank.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only time I've actually been able to get them to breed. And that tank had a ton of hair algae in the bottom. And I think those eggs were hiding in there. And for a while there, I had like 5 successful fry, but only one of them made it, and it grew big enough to where they wouldn't eat it.
Yeah.
And but I'm still giving it a go. Worst case scenario, if I can't get it to happen, and they're at the very top, and if I can't get them to do that way, then I'm gonna have to do what. That's why I was asking you how you're doing it. I might go the route where I have a little 5-gallon, and I think I'm gonna set it up the way you just talked about.
Yep.
I have the knitting mesh, and I was thinking about using that instead of.
Yeah, that'd be better. I found the egg crate's a little too big. So what I did is I put a lot of rocks on it so they would fall down into the little crevices. Another thing you can try is got one of these plant baskets. This fits perfectly in a 10-gallon tank on the rim, and you can put them in there, and then if they drop their eggs, they'll drop down to the bottom. I've seen what's his name from Keeping Fish Simple over in Australia. He did it in a 5-gallon bucket, put them in there overnight, pull them out, and the eggs raised to fry within the bucket. So it's basically what the thing is, they breed in the mornings, and you get the male and female in there the night before or whatever, and get some plants in there and let them go at it, and then take them out. You keep them in there too long, they're probably going to find the eggs. The first time I did it with that egg crate I had in, if it was that 2.5-gallon, I got that resurrection stuff in now, and I had raised it up off the bottom a little bit, and I put some rocks in the corner. Little suckers would keep finding their way through the egg crate, and they're underneath there. So finally I had to sit there and rip it all apart to get them out. And I was like, ooh, but I wound up getting fish out of it. So I was like, all right.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to do is I like to go to thrift stores, and because you never know what you're going to find at the store. It's just one of those things where I just kind of like to go. It's amazing the stuff you'll find that you can use in your fish room that necessarily wasn't intended for a fish room. And this is one of the things that I found in there. It's these little containers. I don't know where they're from, what they're for. I don't know what intentionally they were used for, but I found a stack of these three. There's 3 of them, and I saw they had this the bottom with that mesh on it. And again, I was walking around and I happened to see a 10-gallon tank, and instinctively I grabbed these and I set it on top, and it just happens that it fits perfectly. So this is the next try for those white clouds and all my egg scatters, because I've seen it where the similar basket that you were having, but I like this one because it fit in the opening. So this is going to be the backup plan if I can't get it to do it where I don't have to mess with it. The only problem is that you can't keep the white clouds in here forever, whereas in the tank they're kind of in there. But I haven't tried it. That's going to be the next thing that I do with some of my egg scatters, because I see my Buenos Aires tetras. I see them literally toss eggs, but as soon as they hit the bottom, I got cories, and the cories will eat them up.
Yeah,
and those I don't necessarily want to breed because they eat plants. So I'm just kind of letting them grow out, live out their life, and then once they expire, I need to find a different fish that looks just as nice, but won't eat my plants, because I can't have fish that'll eat my plants.
Yeah, that's not good.
not for my aquariums.
No,
I need to have plants in my aquariums. As much as I try not to, it's either gonna be some sort of either worst case scenario, just hornwort or guppy grass or duckweed, but I gotta have something in there. I've tried it. I can't. I don't think I could. I don't think that exists in my world, an aquarium without plants.
Plants are just so beneficial. It's hard not to keep them in your aquariums unless you, like you said, have a fish that's going to eat them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, it's just,
oh shit,
that's what brought me back into the hobby.
I said 8 o'clock. I forgot my lights all going off.
That's all right. That's what got me back into the hobby after being gone for so long, was just the whole discovery of planted aquariums. Because pretty much when I was keeping them in my teen years, if they were out there, they weren't readily available, I guess, in my area, and everything was just plastic, plastic plants and stuff like that. So, come around the second time where I jumped back into the hobby, that's what I saw was these little underwater gardens, and it's like, oh, I need to have that.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's predominantly what my aquariums are. They're planted tanks that happen to have fish that could coexist with the plants. And that's I have somebody gave me though, like I didn't know the Buenos Aires 8 plants. I learned that the hard way. And it's funny because I have Amazon swords. They must not like those because they leave those alone. But I've tried stem plants. I tried jungle vel because I have a lot of jungle vel. And I thought I was gonna be pretty slick with the jungle vel until I caught them eating it like spaghetti. You know, they start at one end and they gnaw it all the way down to the root base of it. And I was like, you suckers. So that's the only aquarium where the only plants I have in there are Amazon swords. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm not gonna get rid of them, and I'm not gonna, expire them. I'll let them live out their life, and once they do, then I'll find a different fish. But I didn't realize how big those suckers get too, because every time you go to the store, they're about 1.5 inches, and I think mine are almost 3 inches. Wow. And everybody that sees them, they're like, "Whoa, I didn't know they got that big." Because even when you record them, you can't appreciate how big they really are until you see them in person.
Nice, very cool.
So, of all your tanks that you have, which has been the one that has just been so problematic that you're thinking that you've thought about like resetting and going, I'm done with it?
None that I really would get like reset, but the most problematic one's been the puffer tank with dealing with the cyanobacteria and the algae. But not that I'd want it. See, I don't want to reset it. I want to figure out what the heck was wrong with it. May never know, but other than just letting itself work itself out. But yeah, there really has been none I just want to give up on. There's definitely like the cloudy water and that gets frustrating, especially when they last for a few months at a time. But yeah, I know with all of them, it's just a matter of, like we said earlier, just patience and letting it take its course.
Do you ever see yourself not keeping planting tanks?
No, no, not at all.
So what's when you're setting up a tank, what's your first thought? Is it the plants you're going to put in it or the fish?
Usually the fish, because typically the plants and majority of all my tanks are all sort of the same. I use them all from trimmings, all the Ludwigia, the dwarf sage, the pogostem, and stellatus octopus. Those are like my 3 main plants I have in all my aquariums because they grow so much and it's free, and they're fast growing, which is also beneficial for these type of setups. And so I use all of them. It's typically the fish, and then what kind of fish I'm putting in there, and if I need to set it up a certain way for them, which typically all the type of fish I get, except for the Oscar and the puffer, all can be pretty much set up exactly the same way.
One of the things that I've never had the courage to do, I've only seen it once done that way. It was a guy that I knew that was propagating plants in it, but he still had fish. He had some longfin Daniels in there, and there were the leopard Daniels, and he did nothing but dirt. He didn't have a cap in it. And I've always wanted to try that, but I'm too much of a chicken shit to do it. Yeah. And but what was cool is he had tons of plants in there. I mean, it was amazing how much the plants were doing, but all it was just dirt.
Yeah.
And eventually all the stuff will settle down, and yeah, it would stir up whenever he would pull stuff out, but he didn't care because he knew in a day or two it would all just kind of settle down and it would be clear again. Absolutely. But that's something that I think I'm gonna one of these days I will do. But I just think I don't know. I don't know why. I really don't have an explanation as to why I haven't done it, because I've seen it work. So
I think Lucas has a few tanks like that too, where he's just got the dirt or whatever substrate from outside, whatever it is, thrown in there. So.
Well, Adam, it's been 2 hours.
Yeah.
I know. I want to thank you for hanging out with me and for accepting the invitation to be here. And I look forward to see what you continue to do. Like I said, I'm a big fan because I'm basically looking at my fish room, with the exception of the big boys you got back there. Yeah. I still haven't come around to try to do something like that. The only reason for me is because usually those end up being like a species only tank. And yeah. I gotta have more than one fish in my
Yeah,
tanks.
those two tanks are the love for those fish for me.
Yeah.
Where I'm not going to breed them. I can't really put anything else in there. It's more of how much I love those fish. They're like the pets. Where the rest of these, yes, are pets, but they're it's the interesting ecosystem. I can put them all together, and I love it. Or these are a little different. Like that puffer, like everyone in the house loves it. My daughter, my wife who doesn't like my fish because how much I'm obsessed by it. She'll be down here and she likes them too. She'll be tapping on the glass by them. So.
Yeah, that's kind of the same thing with my wife. Although I gotta admit, the fish that she really likes are the angelfish in here, so she always comes to the angelfish tanks, and it's one of the main reasons why I keep angelfish too, is because I know she really really enjoys them. So it's kind of like maybe if she starts liking this, she'll like something else, and then it makes it easier to buy more fish. But that's just hopeful hopeful wishing there and see that works out. But like I said, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me, and I really enjoyed it, and I got to know you a little bit better, and hopefully it's the same for you.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I've always wanted to come on your channel here and talk with you. Like I said, I love talking to people, and yeah, I had a great time, and appreciate you having me on. It was very cool.
Now, before we get out of here, besides YouTube, is there any other social media platforms where people can follow you along?
I have Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, but really Facebook, it's more, I'll post some stuff. It's mostly just my videos. And if I'm maybe some like local swap meet stuff that I've been dealing with, I'll put on there. But Instagram and TikTok, it's really the only things I put on there for the most part is just promoting like my videos. And I don't even do that weekly. So mostly just YouTube, to be honest. So.
And if people want to reach out to you, whether it's questions or maybe guest appearance, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can reach out to me in Messenger on Facebook. You can reach out to me even on Instagram and Messenger. I have a email as well, which is in the description of my channel, which is Patty's Aquatics @gmail. You can reach out to me there as well.
All right. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody that was here with us today. Again, thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate the fact that you guys continue to support me, and we'll see you guys soon. And you guys take care, and we'll definitely be back on before the Christmas break. And I think Sarah and I have got a date worked out that works for the both of us. So there might be, if I can find somebody else before the 21st, then I'll probably do that. But if not, then make sure you guys tune in, and you guys will have an opportunity to get to know Sarah from Sarah the Great. So with that being said, thank you guys, and you guys have a great weekend, and we'll catch each other in one of the chats eventually.